Welcome to the We Are Not Born Failures podcast. I'm your host, Moises Linares. Gracias por acompañarme una semana más. It's always a pleasure to be here. Sometimes I really don't want to do this. I have to fight myself, but I believe in consistency. I believe in discipline. So when you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. Tal vez lo más importante es que en ocasiones cuando pensamos que nadie está escuchando, que a nadie le importa, es cuando recibes un mensaje de alguien que no conoces y te dice, gracias por esas palabras, necesitaba escuchar esto en estos momentos. And that means a lot when you can touch one person. If somebody can benefit from the podcast, I would like for it to be many, many people. But if it's not the case, if one person is able to take something great from this, then I think it's a win. Then it really just reinforces why I'm doing this podcast. Aside from a personal project, a challenge for myself, I love the fact that people can relate, and that's what it's all about. Todo esto es siempre las historias que yo cuento, lo que yo observo, historias de mi vida. La semana pasada fue el perdón, forgiveness was the topic for last week, and it received some good feedback, and I am glad that people can relate. And I always go back and I say, well, I could have added this or I could have said this. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, right? The fact that people are enjoying it. So without further ado, what are we talking about today? Well, you don't know, so I'm going to tell you. We are talking about being the eldest, right? When it comes to having siblings, what does it mean to be the oldest, the eldest? People say that differently. I'm going to go with the term eldest, right? The first one of my siblings at home on my mom's side, because my father, he had more kids, and that's a long story. But I'm going to start with my family, the one that I grew up with, right? I'm the eldest of 7. My mom had 7 kids. And sometimes I wonder, like, how in the world did you do it? How did you have kids? And we are about a year apart, one after another. I guess the gap between all of us is about 10 years. That means when I was 10 years old, my youngest sister, Elkin, was born. And that's the way that life works. A veces uno no escoge el final o el resultado. Puede ser que tengamos la oportunidad de decidir, pero dependiendo de dónde venimos, las cosas cambian. I think if you ask me, and I'm sure my mom would agree, why did you have so many kids? And sometimes it wasn't a choice. When you come from a machismo culture, a country with machismo, then the woman really doesn't have a lot of say in the things she does. And in many cases, it's just passed on because I go further back, and my grandmother had 16 kids, according to her accounts. I sat down with her one day, and she was telling me, bueno, tuve 16 hijos, y me los empezó a nombrar, este. Unfortunately and sadly, not all of them made it. Half of those made it past the infancy stage, so life. But being the eldest, it's a lot of responsibility. It is a lot of responsibility cuando uno es el mayor. En el caso de los hermanos y las hermanas, es una responsabilidad muy diferente porque el padre, madre siempre te pone presión extra. Siempre te dice que tú tienes que ser el ejemplo. And that was the case with me. My mom always told me, you have to be the example. You have to lead your brothers and sisters in the right way. I would say that in my case, I accepted the challenge. I was willing to put that weight on my shoulders and say, all right, I'm going to lead the way. Maybe because I'm built that way, and I know everybody's built different. Everybody thinks different. Everybody's able to handle a certain amount of pressure, and some of us can take more than others. For me, being the eldest was taking on a huge responsibility, taking into consideration the fact that my mom was born in El Salvador. She came to this country with some of the customs of El Salvador. Some of the way they did things out there, the way they believe you should discipline your kids, the way you should raise your kids. Some of those things, they were passed on to me. I'm not going to lie, man. I've mentioned that in a joking manner in the past, but it's true. I got some of those Salvadoran punishments. I'm not kidding you. And when you're the first kid in your family, and your family is an immigrant family that came from a different country, you're the experimental child. At least that's what I call it. They experiment on you. They're learning the ropes. En El Salvador es muy común los castigos a la antigua. Híncate, ¿verdad? Híncate. Híncate en frijoles. It was normal. I got the híncate, the kneel, right? Go, instead of going to a corner, because we see, I would say the Anglo, white counterparts do that. They usually, I don't know if they still do it now, time out or go to the corner. I remember going to school and teachers sending you to the corner, so I imagine it was normal. As an elementary student, I had teachers who would say, go to the corner if you acted up or if you behaved wrong. That was the type of discipline punishment, I would say. But in my case, at home with my siblings, I was the first one to get some of these punishments. And as time passed by, I saw that my siblings did not get the same punishments. Some of them got a little bit, but they kind of just faded away. The youngest one perhaps got the least amount of discipline, old school style, we would call it, compared to the stuff that I went through, or the ones that my cousins went through that share age with me. It was difficult, but first child, you get special treatment. As the eldest of 7, one of the other things that I was responsible for was pretty much becoming the interpreter for my mom. Anywhere I went, anything we did, I was the official interpreter. I might have been 5 or 6 years old, and often I was getting the question, what is she saying? What did she say? Tell me. And I'm trying to process this information really fast, trying to explain stuff that perhaps I had no idea, didn't understand, but they rely on you to do these things. At least they did back then. And it was such a normal thing. You grow up, you're forced to grow up really fast. You have to become a type of leader, especially when you come from a single parent household. En aquel entonces, siendo un niño, era el intérprete oficial de la familia. Cuando íbamos a algún lugar, yo tenía que interpretar, traducir y convertirme, ¿verdad?, en el portavoz oficial de mi mamá, que no entendía inglés, que no hablaba inglés, que le costaba. Y era algo natural, algo normal, que con los años yo pensaba que todos los niños hacían lo mismo. Cuando llegué tal vez a la secundaria, a la preparatoria, me di cuenta que no era así. Uno crece con esto de que se convierte o se hace responsable de ese cargo. Y no era todo malo. Hoy en día puedo decir que no era todo malo, porque por esas experiencias creo que pude fabricar y construir un carácter más fuerte, ser mucho más independiente, bueno y malo. Y lo hablaba con algunas amistades y se lo voy a contar ahorita. Bueno, independiente porque sabes hacer las cosas solo, no necesitas a alguien más para que esté ahí, para que te ayude. Lo malo de eso es que a veces no sabemos preguntar ni pedir ayuda, porque estamos acostumbrados a hacer todo nosotros mismos, a ser independientes, a no contar con nadie, a encontrar la manera cuando no sabemos cómo llegar. Y es algo que he escuchado mucho de los hermanos y hermanas mayores. No pedimos ayuda, lo hacemos todo solo. Ahí me la voy a averiguar. Yo voy a encontrar el camino. Aunque esté sufriendo, no me voy a quejar, no voy a llorar, porque cuando éramos niños era tan normal. No llores, ¿verdad? Tienes que ser fuerte. Y siendo el mayor, era parte del trabajo. Good or wrong, I don't know. Some of you guys might have a different opinion, and some people call that trauma. And for some, it is a trauma, right? The fact that you had to become the translator, interpreter, that you had to carry so much weight take on so much responsibility, good and bad. And I sometimes say the things that I feel are very important in both English and Spanish because I want people to really comprehend and understand the fact that it's perhaps not that normal, but it was normal for us. When you're the firstborn and you have so much responsibilities, it's good and bad in the way that you become independent. You don't need anybody. You're not asking for help. You figure things out on your own. You like to get things done. If there's no way, you'll find a way. But then it's bad because when you do need help, you don't want to ask help. You don't want to ask for help. You don't want to bother anybody. You don't want to seem like you're weak. You don't want to seem like you're vulnerable. Because when you're a kid, they're telling you to be strong, to be courageous, to not be weak. And it's all these things that we hear, and it all falls. In most cases, not every single instance, but it does fall on the eldest. It's a responsibility that falls into you. One of the things that in my personal experience I recall was the fact that as the firstborn from a single parent family, I had to take on a different role. One that I, till this day, I don't know, man. It just kind of, it rubbed me the wrong way. Not because it's bad, just because I think that it wasn't right. And that no kid should actually go through that. But sometimes necessity pushes you in that direction. Necessity pushes people to go in a direction that oftentimes we don't want to go in. And that's why you understand your parents when you see them struggle and when you see all the stuff they had to do to just put food on the table, to provide, to be there for you. I remember somebody asking my sisters about me and saying, what was he like, or how would you describe him? And it was tough on them as well. And I think the reply came back to me, and I said, yeah, it's true. I've never seen it like that, but they're not wrong. And what I mean by that is, when I was a kid, I was in a way forced to take care of my siblings based out of necessity. I was forced to look after them. I was forced to take care of them. I was 10 years old and I was taking care of my siblings. I was as young as, no lie, 7 or 8 years old, taking care of a newborn in the United States. I was taking care of my newborn brother. I was taking care after that of my sisters. And eventually I was 10, 11, and I was always there while my mom went to work, looking for ways to just bring some food back and put some food on the table. I was home taking care of my brothers and sisters as a little boy, making sure they were okay, making sure they were showered, making sure that they had food. I would cook for them at that age. I know these are things no one knows about me. These are things no one's ever heard. So when they see me, they feel like, oh, you're fine. Like, no, you didn't go through struggle. They see me in a suit. They see me in front of a camera. They see me with a microphone yelling goals today, right, for Major League Soccer. And they feel that, oh, you've had it easy, man. You've never struggled. That's not struggled. You were born in the U.S. How do you know what struggle looks like? There's struggle in the U.S. Perhaps it's a different type of struggle if I compare it to Central America. It's a different type of struggle if I compare it to Africa. But yeah, siendo un niño, yo tenía que quedarme con mis hermanos, tenía que cuidarlos, tenía que asegurarme que se bañaran, que por lo menos la casa estuviera limpia cuando mi mamá regresaba, y después que les cocinara para que tuvieran algo de comer. Si mi mamá no lo podía hacer, porque en ocasiones no lo podía hacer, yo me quedaba encargado y mi mamá me había enseñado a cómo hacer todas esas cosas. Difícil, sí, difícil, muy difícil. Por el simple hecho que la gente se imagina y piensa de que cuando naces en los Estados Unidos no sufrís, que todo es fácil, que te lo han regalado todo, que el sufrimiento aquí no se puede comparar con el sufrimiento en otros países, ya sea Centroamérica, Latinoamérica, África. Aquí todo es fácil, según muchas personas, y no es así. And in that instance, when I took care of my siblings, when I looked after them, when I protected them without wanting the responsibility, in a way, I became a type of father figure. Dad was never home. He was actually never there. He came in and out. It was my sisters, my brother, and myself, and my mom. But mom had to go and make a little bit of money, whichever way she could. And I had to step up and make sure that everybody was fine. And when people today ask me, because I have other siblings, I simply didn't grow up with them. We weren't together as kids. When they ask me, I tell them, hey, there's a reason why I'm so close with my sisters and my brother. And it's because we've struggled together. We've been through so much together. Things perhaps that we should have never gone through, but it happened. Sometimes life doesn't give you exactly what you want the way you want it. And as the oldest, right, the eldest of 7, I was responsible for making sure that they saw that I was strong, that we could make it out, that we could keep fighting, that we could keep moving forward. And it was around that age, then you become a teenager. And around that time in life, going through so much stuff, is when I decide I'm the eldest. I have to lead the way. I have to show them that we can. I have to finish high school. I have to go to college. I have to finish college. I have to graduate a 4-year university. I have to go out there and look for a job. Then I have to travel 3,000 miles across the country to do what I've been dreaming of doing, and to show them that it's possible with a lot of hard work, with a lot of sacrifice. That was the responsibility I took upon myself as the eldest of 7. ¿Fue fácil? Definitivamente no fue fácil. ¿Me arrepiento de algo? Absolutamente nada. Quisiera que en ocasiones no hubiéramos pasado por tantos momentos difíciles, pero sé que de alguna manera eso forjó mi carácter. Eso me ayudó a ser la persona que soy hoy en día. Soy, digamos, una persona con una personalidad dura, que no se rinde, que sigue, que le pueden golpear, que se pone de pie, que sigue luchando y nunca pierde la fe. Sí, hay momentos que tengo ganas de perderla. Hay momentos donde digo, debería tirar la toalla, debería de renunciar y dejar de hacer lo que estoy haciendo y dedicarme a otra cosa, pero me recuerdo el propósito, por qué lo estás haciendo, cuál es tu razón. ¿Valdría la pena todo lo que hemos sacrificado, todo lo que hemos hecho, si decido rendirme hoy? Y la respuesta es no. Hay que seguir, hay que pelear. And that's the bond of the eldest brother or sister. There's a lot of us out there, especially if you're born first generation in the United States. If your parents came from another country and you had to go through all that struggle and you became the person you are today. Now, for clarification purposes, the firstborn doesn't always live up to the expectation for many reasons. Sometimes they make the mistakes. They become the bad examples. They do everything they weren't supposed to do. It could be for many reasons. It could be because the parent wasn't home. The parent was out there working, trying to provide in a lot of situations, right? So the second one steps up, or the third one steps up. It's a normal thing. It's happened for generations and generations, but the responsibility remains the same. The first one to lead the way. The first one to change the narrative. The first one to see things differently. The first one to want something else than what your family wanted for you. Doesn't always pan out the way we want it to. Being the first is not a choice. It's assigned at birth. It's something that we have to live with. And you embrace it, and you love the fact that you look at your siblings and you're like, wow, they look up to you. They admire you. They respect you. different than perhaps any of the other siblings in the group. If it's more than two, I would say. Is it is it something that fills you with joy? Yeah, it does. Because till this day, I speak to my brothers and sisters on both sides, mother and father, and we often talk about life. And they're often asking me for advice. I need advice myself. But when you have your siblings come to you and ask you, what do you think? How do you feel about this? Or what did you do when you went through this? It's like, wow, it's a role that not many can perform. And I feel that really, it makes it worth it. For me, those things that I mentioned and talked about, right? The fact that when you're a kid, you're the translator. You become independent. You also become a type of parent, right? Whether it's a mother or father, depending on who's the one at home. It's a journey. It's a journey that's worth talking about. These are flowers for all the older brothers and sisters out there that make sure that they're leading the way, that they're doing the right thing, that they're inspiring their siblings, because I feel that that's our responsibility. A veces no lo queremos entender, pero sí lo es. Como hermano o hermana mayor, nuestra responsabilidad es liderar, ser líder, ser ejemplo. Lo aprendemos de chiquitos. Desde muy pequeños aprendemos que tienes que ser el ejemplo. Seguro mi abuela se lo decía a mi mamá. Y la mamá de mi abuela se lo decía a ella. Y son las cosas positivas que tenemos que seguir practicando. Porque no es fácil, pero no es imposible. Y mencionaba las cosas que hablamos, de las que he hablado el día de hoy. Ser el intérprete oficial. Ser independiente. Ser de alguna manera una figura, materna o paterna para nuestros hermanos cuando hace falta un padre en el hogar. ¿Vale la pena? Sí. Pienso que absolutamente vale la pena. No hay duda que esto, da frutos a largo plazo. A veces en el momento no lo podemos ver. No podemos observar lo que estamos haciendo ni el valor de nuestros sacrificios, pero yo ahora, en este punto de mi vida, puedo ver que sí, hay buenos beneficios, hay un fruto que se está dando en estos momentos con mis hermanas, con mis hermanos, con los hijos de mis hermanas y mis hermanos. Porque ellos te ven y quieren ser como tú. El tío mayor. No tiene que ser el tío mayor, pero en este caso sí lo es. That's why I think that it's worth it. I think that being the eldest, it's an amazing responsibility that bears fruit down the road. We don't see them instantly, but in my personal case, now that my sisters have kids and they see me, I'm like, it's worth it, because in a lot of instances, we didn't have that. I didn't have that. My friends didn't have that. No role models. No one to look up to. But the first one has to make a decision to want to be different, to challenge the norm, to create a new path. That for me is what makes it worth it. This journey, this path is all worth it when you know where you're going, when you know why you're working, why you're doing what you do. Therefore, I salute all the older brothers and sisters. I think it's amazing to know that you've done and you've made a difference when you look back, because you didn't give up when things were difficult. When you were a kid and you were asked to do things that perhaps you should have never been doing, you stepped up and you said, yeah, all right, I'll be your translator. I'm independent. Yeah, my brothers and sisters need me. I'll take care of them. It's not normal in the U.S. It's normal in other countries. Here, it's never been normal, but it's happened. It still happens today. But the love you create from those experiences and relationships with your siblings, that connection, the bonds, the relationships, I think that They all show us how to be better. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the We Are Not Born Failures podcast. Siblings, the eldest, right? Brother, sister, if you're listening to this and you went through some of this and you've made it and now you see your siblings and how much they appreciate you, then this is for you. For the ones that are not in that category, do better. You always have time. There's always time. As long as we are alive, there's time. I believe that. I live by that rule. Therefore, I encourage you to keep pushing forward. Be a better brother. Be a better sister. Be a better example. Lead the way. Blaze a new path. And like always, stay tuned for another episode because it's always a pleasure to share my thoughts with all of you guys at home. And if you're watching or listening, leave a comment, share it. Send this video to that brother, sister you love so much. See you guys next week.